I'm very concerned here. I've had this experience in aviation. You're going to apportion this valuable resource at the outset. You are going to establish a property right. You know, we can't deal with National Airport rationally or LaGuardia nationally because all those airlines who just happen to have been there or their predecessor airlines were there at the outset, they have a property right, by God, and they own the gates. And no one else can land and come in there, and unless they want to pay them $10 million for a gate. I don't understand how the successor clauses are going to work. I don't understand how we're going to deal with the leasing issue. The last thing I want is Goldman Sachs buying up all the shares in a fishery in 3 years after the restriction in the third year where you can lease it to anybody, including financial speculators. And then we have derivatives of fisheries shares being sold on Wall Street. I mean, you know, the craziness that can come out of this is extraordinary. You got to get it right at the beginning, and I don't think you really have a clue and have thought through the implications. And even those who are advocating this because they're desperate to fish, you know, if you raise these issues with them, well, it might mean that all the fish are going to go to one community and one processor. In the not too distant future, they'd say, oh, well, no, that can't happen. Well, yeah, it can, because if, you know, how you deal with the leasing of these shares in the future and how you deal with the accumulation of the lease shares, not the ownership, but the leasing of the ownership and the actual fishing that takes place and where those fish get directed and who actually controls that, whether it's, you know, some processor or some Wall Street broker or somebody else. I don't think you've thought this stuff through. And I think we could have a disaster like they had in New Zealand, you know, at the outset. So I would hope that you'll take your time, get it right, and not just rush off to, oh, well, we'll market-based system, here we go, and the local councils will solve it. I just don't want to see that pressure from the national office, and I don't have tremendous trust in PFMC not to rush ahead either. But we'll try and deal with that in our region. Would anybody else, Ms. Cobb or the gentleman, Mr. Backus from Ecotrust, care to comment? Do you share some of the concerns I just expressed? Ms. Cobb?
Yes, thank you, Congressman DeFazio. At the last council meeting, which was, last week in Sacramento, several of us approached the council, the Pacific Fishery Management Council, and asked them to set up a committee on community fishing associations so that we could prepare these communities for impacts from this trawl IQ plan. And the council declined to do that because they are literally so rushed to get this IQ program through.
What, rushed by whom?
I don't know what, I mean, there are certain elements in the fishing industry that are pushing this to move it forward, but the council repeatedly says, we have spent 6, 7 years on this. We've got to get it done. We've got to start this program in 11, and I don't see any reason.
Really? Have they answered all those issues and concerns and questions I just raised?
I don't think so, no. I think that that program could be slowed down, and I really think that there needs to be a meeting held with the people who are very concerned about that program and with NIMS to be able to express that so we can find out how. So then maybe what we need is some direction from the national office to the PFMC looking at saying, well, you know, we don't think you've answered this range of questions, and if we look at testimony from Mr. Rosenberg and others, it's going to be a lot harder to change this after you implement it because of the property rights. And, you know, that just really, thank you. Okay, sorry, I appreciate that. You know, so maybe we need some intervention, but not to rush it, but to get it right and take your time. It sounds like, yes, sir. Mr. Rock.
If I may, Mr. DeFazio, thank you. Yes, I think in my oral statement earlier this morning, I pointed out that ownership structures are very much key to the future, and the way that the Pacific Trawl IQ program is structured now in terms of its eligibility to own rules, it essentially allows perpetual leasing to happen. I'm all for
sort of like California water rights, right?
We can, you know, I'm all for family businesses in fishing working their way through the generations, but if we're going to have one of the presumed benefits of having a quota market, if it's properly structured, is liquid trade. When people retire, it's a public trust asset. It should go back into the system. If you have perpetual leasing the way that ownership structures are set up now, that will never happen. And as Ms. Cobb said, we've been discussing with the council the implementation of these community provisions that are already in Magnuson. regional fishery associations, fishing community structures, which are clearly defined in Magnuson. And we've been pressing for community fishing association criteria and rules of engagement for communities to be defined, so the communities that are ready to develop CFAs, community fishing associations, can go forward and feel that what they're doing is valid. It's not an integral part of the Trawl IQ program, and given National Standard 8 around social and economic consequences, a lot of us don't understand why these provisions are not a key part of the design, the market design of this program from the get-go. The adaptive management program, which sets aside 10% of the trawl groundfish allocation, is going to be a trailing action that's going to be played out for 2 years after the initial start date of the program. I don't understand why that would be the case. There are lots of unanswered questions about unintended consequences, but we firmly believe at the community level, like in Alaska, allocate 10% to the community development quota corporations. It's worked out very well. 10% for this adaptive management program, but let's make some solid decisions about where it should be placed. And that, I think, should be at the community level and these community structures that are already described in the Magnuson-Stevens fisheries law. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.